I know you have to turn around to look this way now that we moved the room around, boys and girls, but I do want you to look at the backboard. We're going to do two things this morning. We're going to focus from chapter 13 on rising action and then being able to make some inferences. So we're going to be doing some inferring. The rising action I've made different this time. This is a flow chart of sequence of events that create the rising action. Do you remember how we normally label and write our rising action? How do we normally do it? It has to do with terrain or geography, the ground. Yeah, Gordon, go ahead.
No.
We do the mountains and we go up the mountain. And what happens at the top of the mountain? It is the big event. What do we call that big event? It's usually so you have the rising action and then the what? No, it's early in the morning this morning. Very good. We have the rising action where you're getting more and more on the edge of your seat, or like last week what we did is we got down on the ground and we slowly, every time another event happened and we wanted to end up on our desks. If that was safe, we would have done that. Okay, well this time we're going to do it like this. And the reason we're doing it like this, if you're going to go on your Google Classroom, Google Classroom today, you're going to see a chart very similar. And you'll be working on this with a partner if we have time. I know we had a snow day yesterday, but that's the goal today, and maybe we'll have to get to it tomorrow. So now let's reflect back on chapter 12, My Brother Sam is Dead. Does anyone remember the last major thing that happened in chapter 12? Joshua.
Sam was arrested for being a cattle thief, but it wasn't.
Okay, Sam was arrested for being a cattle thief. How many of you realize that? Okay, I would like to rewind a little bit. Let's just look at page 180. It says at the very bottom, he darted around the house toward the road, his eyes following the hoof prints in the snow. What can you infer he's doing? If his eyes are following the hoof prints in the snow, he's trying to see where the what are? He's trying to see where the cows are. So he's trying to track them down, right? He's trying to make sure he follows them, and that's an easy way to follow someone when you see those footprints in the snow, right? It's easy enough. So let's keep going. I snatched up a shovel and drove the remaining 4 cattle back into the barn with the handle. They were bulky, and it took me a few minutes to get them inside and the door and shut and latched. Then I raced across the snow around the house to the road, and there I stopped, and I swung my eyes across the horizon. I saw nothing, but distantly I heard the noise of shouting. Still stay with me, please, page 181, middle of the page. Off toward the far end of the training ground. I ran in the direction of the sounds, and then suddenly I saw 3 men walking toward me through the moonlight, side by side. I stopped and waited, because at first he doesn't know who these men are, right? He just sees 3 figures coming toward him. I saw 3 men walking toward me through the moonlight, side by side. I stopped and waited. They came up. The one in the middle was Sam. His nose was bleeding, and there was a cut in his chin. His hands were tied behind his back. I stood in the open white snow field, surrounded by shadowy trees. "Sam!" I shouted. "Timmy, get Colonel Parsons. They're taking me in as a cattle thief." I went cold, and then I turned and ran. Where did Timmy run to? To get Colonel Parsons, right? It doesn't say that's why he turned and ran, but we know that because who just told him to go get him? Sam. Okay, so we're making some inferences here. Do you remember anything that Sam told Timmy about Colonel Parsons? He's one of the strict ones. Right, he's one of the strict ones. Okay, and he's now Timmy, this little kid, is in charge of going to get him. Right? Do you think the odds are looking in Sam's favor right now? I don't think so either. Let's look at page 182. So we're now on chapter 13. X and then 3 I's. X, I, I. "I want to see Colonel Parsons, please, sir," I said. The adjutant stared at me through the half-open door. "What about?" "Sam Meeker sent me. He's been arrested as a cattle thief." "Colonel Parsons can't be troubled about that." "But it's all a mistake," I said. He didn't do it. He was chasing the ones who did it. The adjutant laughed. Sure, he didn't steal the cows. They followed him out of the barn on their own accord. Please, it's true. We were sitting there. Enough. Colonel Parsons is in bed. Come back in the morning and perhaps he'll see you then. All right, let's go to our events. What is our first event? And it's going to be from the end of chapter 12. And then Timmy does what?
Tim tries to get him out.
Who's he going to speak with? Okay, I'm just going to abbreviate in the interest of time. All right. I know you want to get back to it, so let's do it. We left off on the top of page 183. There wasn't any point in arguing with him, and I realized I would have to see Colonel Parsons in the morning. The cows were still loose, and I had to do something about them anyway. Thank you, sir, I said, and I turned and ran back over to the empty spaces of snow toward the training ground. In the brightness of the moonlight, it was very easy to see the forms of 3 cattle standing in the middle of the snowy field. As fast as I could, I pushed out into the snow toward them. As I came up, I saw a 4th cow lying on the ground. It was dead, half buried in the snow, and its belly had been sliced open, its guts glistening wet in the moonlight. The 3 living cows were staggering around in the deep snow and bawling unhappily. I found a stick in the tree line at the edge of the field and began driving the cattle home. It was a terrible job. They hated floundering around in the deep snow and balked constantly. It took me over half an hour to get them safely back into the barn. I threw them down some hay, and then I went into the tavern. Mother was sitting in front of the fire looking worried. I saw you coming across the road. Where's Sam? They arrested him. The ones who stole the cattle beat him up, and they said he had stolen the cattle himself, and they marched him off somewhere. Back to the encampment? I guess so. They'll let him go in the morning, won't they? I mean, all we have to do is explain it, don't we? She shook her head. I have a terrible foreboding, Timothy. I want to pray. The dead cow is still out there, Mother. I want to get it before somebody else does. If we haven't got time to pray to the Lord for help, we haven't got much time at all, have we? So we got down on our knees and we prayed for Sam. And then I got I got the butchering knives out, and we went together into the snowfield and cut up the cow. The meat was already beginning to freeze, making it hard to cut. We had to chop it all into small pieces because neither of us were strong enough to carry the whole side of beef by ourselves. It took us an hour of struggling to cut the animal up and carry it home. We hid it in the barn loft under the hay. It would keep well enough in that cold weather. So he's doing exactly what who told him to do?
Sam.
Right, before all this had happened. In the morning, I went back to Captain Bett's house to talk to Colonel Parsons. They made me wait around outside the door for half an hour before they let me in. Colonel Parsons seemed nice enough, but awfully busy. I told him the story, but he shrugged. It surprises me about that Sam would be taken for a thief. I thought he was a man of great patriotism than that. But people fool you. He didn't do it, sir. These other men... He held up his hand to stop me. I know, you told me that. In any case, there isn't anything I can do. They've taken him out to the encampment, and it'll be up to General Putnam to do what he wants. Now, do you remember who General Putnam is?
Yes.
He's the really strict one. And he's the one that, what did Sam say he would do?
Hang someone.
Yeah, to make a what out of them? Example out of them, right? Okay, so Tim goes to speak with Colonel Parsons. It doesn't work, so he goes back to clean up the dead cow, and he put them away. Put the others up. Then Mom and Timmy, what do? They pray. Actually, they prayed before. I should have said that. Then they go to put them up. Okay, so what does Colonel Parsons say? Can't help. Okay. So Colonel Parsons won't help. Do you think Colonel Parsons really thinks Sam is a cattle thief?
No.
I don't think so either. I think he's like, well, sometimes people surprise you. I didn't think Sam was like that. So he held up his hand. General Putnam, I get out of there in a hurry. Okay, they've taken him out to the encampment, and it'll be up to General Putnam to do what he wants. I'd get out there in a hurry, though. The general is determined to make an example of somebody. It could go hard with Sam. General Putnam is a great and dedicated patriot, and he does not take defection from duty lightly. Now I was beginning to get worried. At first it had seemed that it wouldn't take much to straighten the mistake out. After all, it was our own cows that had been stolen. Surely they'd believe us when we told them that Sam hadn't taken them. But the way the Colonel Parsons talked about it bothered me. He didn't seem to care very much about whether Sam was guilty or not. It didn't seem very important to him at all. I said so to Mother. She looked sad. They've seen so much death, these soldiers. What does the life of one more man mean to them? She sighed. Now we must go down to the encampment and try to save him. We couldn't both go. One of us had to stay and watch the tavern. We were required by law to keep the tavern open most of the time in case travelers came by. In any case, it was risky to leave the place unguarded. Why would it be risky? What can you infer about that? Eli.
The cattle thieves who were trying to steal the cattle in the first place.
Okay, not just the cattle they have to worry about, but what else is in the tavern?
All their supplies.
All their supplies, all of their food. We decided that Mother ought to go. She was an adult. Her word would go better with General Putnam than mine would. She put on her bonnet and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and started out. I stood in the yard and watched her go down the road until she was merely a black spot in the field of white. And then I went out to the barn to look the cattle over more carefully in case any of them had been hurt. Not that it mattered much. I was determined to butcher them as soon as I had the chance. Betsy Reed came into the tavern a half an hour later. She hadn't bothered to comb her hair properly, and she looked scared. What's happened to Sam? I heard he was arrested for something. For stealing cattle, I said. She got angry. Sam didn't do that! I didn't say he did. I told her the story. Mother's really worried. I've never seen her so down. Not even when we found out Father was dead. She bore up when he got captured and bore up when we learned he had died. But she isn't bearing up now. She's trying, but she isn't bearing up. It's not having enough to eat. You don't have the strength to keep your spirits up. She sat and dropped her head on the taproom table. What are we going to do about Sam? I don't know. Mother's finding out. Will they hang him if they think he did it? Stay with me, please. I don't know. It seemed like a good chance they would, the way everybody was talking about how hard General Putnam was. But I didn't want to think about that. Probably they would just put him in prison. I wouldn't mind that, Betsy said. At least he wouldn't be able to get himself into any more trouble. I didn't say anything. All I could think about was Father and Jerry Sanford. Could your father do anything? Maybe, she said. I'll talk to him right away. She left, and I was glad. I didn't want to dwell on Sam. There was plenty of things to do to keep myself busy. Besides regular chores, I had to start getting ready to butcher, and this meant putting up hooks for hanging the meat in the barn. We'd never butchered 8 head of cattle at one time, and we didn't have the hanging space for them. To occupy my mind, I spent my spare moments figuring out the best way to do it. Okay, who left to go talk to Mr. General Putnam? Okay, so we're going to say this is event 6.